Another week has come and gone, which means it's time once again for me to turn to you, the viewers. At the end of every week, I put out a video in my series called Your Take, Not Mine, where I ask you, the viewers, to give me some of your hottest takes of the week around the NBA world, and then I pick my favorite ones and give my thoughts on them in a video. To submit your takes, I make a community post on my channel similar to the one that you see on your screen now, where you just have to post them in the comments. So if you want a chance to be featured in a video in the future, be sure to stay on the lookout for those posts, usually either on Fridays or Saturdays. We've got some real good ones to discuss today, but before we get started, it turns out about 68% of you watching right now aren't even subscribed to the channel, so please, if you enjoy the content, consider hitting the subscribe button, because not only does it help out a ton, but I would also very much appreciate it. Now, with that being said, let's begin. The first take we'll be discussing comes to us from TJ, and he says that he's tired of everyone saying that the Wizards won the John Wall for Russell Westbrook trade, and that Westbrook does not make them an instant playoff team because the East is actually looking competitive this year. So obviously that big trade happened the other day, and everyone's been giving their 2 cents on the matter, with most seeming to like it more for Washington than for Houston. John Wall hasn't been healthy in about 2 years, and it's pretty much a guarantee that Westbrook is an upgrade over him objectively. However, there is a lot more that needs to be taken into consideration past simply thinking about who the better player is. Will Westbrook's style of play mesh with Bradley Beal and actually elevate the young team the Wizards have around them? We'll have to wait and see. However, regarding his point about them not being an instant playoff team, I somewhat agree. The East did definitely improve across the board, and the battle for those 8 playoff spots will be hard fought. Right now, it's looking like the fight for that 8 seed will be between the Wizards, Hawks, and Magic, and both the Hawks and the Wizards will look a lot better. If I had to pick right now, I would probably favor the Hawks because of all the veteran, highly productive players that they added to a team loaded with promising young talent already, but the Wizards will be right there with them. The success of the Westbrook addition will ultimately come down to how well he meshes with Bradley Beal, and that is yet to be determined. The next take we'll be discussing comes to us from Khalil, and he says that the Lakers will have a 70-win season this year. First of all, I'm not sure that he knew the NBA season was shortened to only 72 games this year, so to adjust for the shortened schedule, a 70-win season during the normal 82-game duration would be the same as a 61-game season this year. Now, the Lakers are coming off of a championship season, and going into this year, they have in many ways improved. And in 71 games last season, they won 52 games. So can they add 9 more wins to this season with a new and improved team alongside superstars LeBron James and Anthony Davis? Sure they can. I definitely wouldn't put it past them at all. But is it realistic? Probably not. And there's a few reasons why I feel this way. For one, the offseason between this season and last season is a lot shorter than normal because of the fact that the NBA has to play catch-up for all of the lost time during the original COVID break. So after their arduous championship run, they have less time to be refreshed and heal up for this upcoming season. Secondly, LeBron will be 36 this year, and you're kidding yourself if you don't think he's going to rest games every now and then to preserve himself for the playoffs at this point in his career. I think the Lakers are still the top dogs of the league, but they might not go all out in the regular season, which is why I do not think they'll hit a win total of 61 games this year. The next take we'll be discussing comes to us from Schliebel, and he says that the Miami Heat will take a big step back this year and won't make it very far in the playoffs. Now, after an unprecedented run to the finals last year, the Heat come into this season with high hopes, but it definitely will not be easy to replicate what they accomplished last year. So many teams in the Eastern Conference around them improved, and at least on paper, the Heat look very similar from a year ago, not having made any major splashes outside of the additions of Avery Bradley and Mo Harkless. However, they can also be counted on to expect improvement from young guys like Tyler Hero and Kendrick Nunn, as is the case with most players going from year 1 to year 2. Right now, the East is equally as wide open as it was last year, with even more realistic contenders, as the Bucks, Nets, Heat, 76ers, Celtics, and Raptors can all realistically win the conference. So it's both not unreasonable to think the Heat won't find as much success this year as they did last year, but it's also equally as reasonable to think that they're still one of the best teams in the conference and can still win it all. So ultimately, we'll just have to wait and see how things play out. The next take we'll be discussing comes to us from Rizwan, and he says that the Nets this year, with a healthy Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, will have the same issues that the Clippers did last year, and as a result, get eliminated early from the playoffs. Now, what he likely means by this is that the Clippers last year, like the Nets this year, have a ton of talent, and as a result, have very high expectations for their season, but because of a clash in play styles and possibly egos, they might not go as far as expected. One thing that is very similar between these two teams is that they're led by two superstar talents, but both of which are score-first players by nature, and there isn't really a true playmaker on their roster for either that can run the offense and set others up, which could spell trouble. Despite all of the talent on the Clippers last year, they found themselves playing a lot of isolation basketball down the stretch of playoff games because they didn't have anybody who excelled in the area of playmaking for others, and as a result, they became a little bit predictable. The Nets now have a lot of guys that can score the basketball at a high level, but there's going to have to be more unselfishness if they want to make it work. This is a big year for Kyrie Irving because he very well could be that guy. But after 2 seasons in Boston that ended in disappointment and a bit of a wash of a season in Brooklyn last year, he has to step up his game as a playmaker. Spencer Dinwiddie is another score-first player, despite technically being a point guard, and Karis LeVert is admittedly a pretty good passer of the basketball for a wing player, but still primarily a scorer. And ultimately, how far this team can go will come down to how willing everyone is to sacrifice and play together, because that was the undoing of the Clippers. And finally, the last take we'll be discussing today comes from Rex, and he says that James Harden is a hindrance to the Rockets because he does not work well with other star players and demands the offense be centered around him. Okay, so this is something that Harden gets a lot of flack for, and it's something that I'm confident could not be further from the truth. So if Harden is the issue in Houston, then explain this. Why, after Dwight Howard left Houston, did he go from team to team unwanted by anybody until he changed his mindset and accepted a role off the bench? If Harden was such a hindrance to Chris Paul, then I would definitely like to know why Paul's only conference finals appearance in his career happened to be alongside James Harden. And now, if Harden was such a hindrance to Russell Westbrook, then please explain to me why Westbrook was a first-round exit as the #1 option 3 years in a row before this year, and then when he comes to Houston, he was finally able to win a playoff series alongside James Harden, despite not even playing all that well in the playoffs this year. It is ridiculous to point the finger at Harden here because the common denominator between all of his star teammates is the fact that they were all more successful alongside him than otherwise. And with that being said, that's all I have for you today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below what you think about the topics we discussed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time.